Panchakavatubhyascha kripasindubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahavandanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya. Namne Goda Twise Namaha. Hare Krishna. So, it looks a bit bright, doesn't it? Hold on. Anyway, I read something I want to share with you. It's so nice. What Prabhupada said. And it's a beautiful meditation. You want to hear it? It'll make you happy. It's hard to be happy in the world is the way the world's going. You ever feel guilty about being happy because the things there's so many people suffering now? It's like I can't be happy because people are suffering. I feel guilty. Anyway, we'll talk about that today. But Prabhupada was describing different pastimes of Krishna. And, some of Krishna's pastimes, it looks like Krishna's going through some difficulty, right? Kaliya, he's got a fight with Kaliya. These various asuras are attacking. Battle of Kurukshetra. He has to deal with Duryodhana's envy, etc., etc. So, in one sense, it looks like Krishna's he's going through some stuff. It looks like difficulty, right? I mean, he had to deal with Kamsa, then there was an elephant in front. He had to the elephant was trying to kill him. That was part of the plot. And Kamsa's trying to kill him with these wrestlers, and then he has to kill Kamsa. It's like, how would you like to be God? People think, I like to be God. Okay, well, that's a day in the life. You got to kill an elephant. You got to fight with wrestlers 3 times your size. And then you have to execute through martial arts the king of Mathura. And that was just the morning. Yeah, what to speak of the rest of the day. And you've got to keep the planets floating also at the same time. So anyway, there's a word that comes up in prayers and philosophy called Ananda Maya. Ananda Maya Rasa. Ananda, of course, we know means happiness without end. Ananda. Nanda, bliss that has no ending, which is difficult to imagine, right? Happiness with no ending. Anyone have that experience? Happiness without ending? Usually happiness has a starting time and an ending time, doesn't it? Material happiness. Or a starting date and an ending date. And even within the happiness time, sometimes there's something goes wrong, right? So Ananda Maya means full of. And the way Prabhupada translated this or explained this, it said that in Krishna there is bliss. Bliss exists. He's full of bliss, just as we are, but he's the source of it. So he's more full than we are. But that's his nature, right? So because that's his nature, in every Leela and every pastime that he engages in, it's only bliss. It's an absorption in bliss. Even if externally it looks like suffering, it isn't. It's only bliss. It's only happiness. That's all it is. I think you all know that, but it was just interesting to read how Prabhupada explained that, going through different Leelas and explaining, no, this is all for Krishna. He's just having fun. Kali is killing him. No, he's having fun. He's playing. The wrestlers, the elephant. No, he's having fun. He's playing with Arjuna. You remember on the battlefield, Arjuna was, of course you remember, Arjuna was very depressed. And then he threw his bow down and said, I can't fight. You've done that before, haven't you? You ever thrown your, whatever you throw down and say, I can't do it? Yeah. So like that. if you study the Bhagavad Gita and you've paid attention, in other words, if your eyes were open and ears were open while you were reading it, you'll come across this scene. Then it's nice to visualize this scene. So there's Arjuna, completely depressed. You sometimes see him with his hand on his head. His bow is down by his side. He's giving up. And then Krishna's kind of little smile on his face, a little more than Mona Lisa. It's not like, is Krishna smiling or not? No, he's smiling. And like, why is Krishna smiling and Arjuna's depressed? It doesn't sound very compassionate or empathetic, does it? Krishna smiling in the midst of both armies. Do you remember that? Spoke the following words, like, well, Prabhupada says there are different reasons he's smiling, and there could be 108 reasons that he's smiling. But for the sake of this conversation, aside from the fact that he was going to be able to enlighten Arjuna and solve his problems, which was one of the reasons he was smiling, and he was also noticing how foolish the things Arjuna said were, like, even though Arjuna is suffering, all the things he's saying is causing him to suffer. So Krishna's looking at this and like, yeah, this is kind of funny. You're saying all these things that are causing you to suffer. But in the context of what we're discussing now, even in the midst of this battle, 680 million people, or what is it, 640 million people are going to die, and Krishna knows that. And trying to help Arjuna, Krishna, everything for him is just like bliss. Yeah, this is bliss. And we look at that and say, how could that be bliss? That's like a gory battle and a depressed Arjuna and a tense situation and relatives on the other side that he has to kill, etc. But for Krishna, even though he can experience that tension, he experiences it within the realm of bliss. And that's hard for us to understand, because when we see the Leela, it looks like Krishna's running from Jasoda. He's fearful. He's crying. And then you're asking yourself, is he actually fearful? Is he actually crying? And the answer is, can be if he wants to be, but it's just to make himself happy and to make Mother Yashoda happy. So Krishna's just having fun. And so he thinks, okay, what would be good for Mother Yashoda for this Leela? I'm going to cry, and she's going to, like, when she sees me crying, she's going to just like feel so bad. And it's going to increase the rasa, and everything's going to get sweeter and sweeter. So when he's fearful eyes, when he's crying, it's all arranged. It's all a production. But he never leaves that blissful realm because that's his nature. He's full of bliss. So we know that, but we forget that. Sometimes we forget. And we read about the gopis in separation and Mahaprabhu in separation and all these other anxieties and tensions that go on in the Leela and the gopi and Krishna stealing things and the gopis complaining to Mother Yashoda and Mother Yashoda having to deal with Krishna. And, it looks like things we do has nothing to do with what we do. And it's all just Leela. It's all blissful. Now, you know why that's good news? It's good news because when you go back to Godhead, you don't have to worry about your happiness. The happiness is already ingrained in everything. So you don't have to look for it. It's what everything is made out of. Then you don't have to worry about dying because that's what everything is made out of eternity. And you don't need Google because everything is full of knowledge. So you don't have to make any effort to live forever as we try to do here through medical treatment. You don't have to make any effort for knowledge as we do here. And you don't have to make any effort to be happy because that's the nature of the spiritual world. What do you think? You want to go? Good idea. You know what I think? I think that we are amazingly stupid because we all say we want to go, but you say, okay, you want to go, but this is what you have to give up to go. And you go, oh, well, I don't know. That's our stupidity. We're attached to suffering. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. And we're attached to doing things that cause us suffering. That sounds strange, but as we know, it's true. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. And I also wanted to share a mantra with you. I'm going to put this mantra in the chat. And oops, I have to bring it up. We can chant it together. This is kind of like the Vedic, um, it's like a Vedic mantra. We're not sure what Veda it's from. Or some people say it's Vedic inspired. But this is a mantra for the blessings and the peace of the world. I want to see if I can even copy it. Oh my God. It's in a form which may not be copyable. But the one, if I can't copy it properly, then the one and only Chaitanya Dasi will find the mantra. Oh, look at that. You can't see that, right? It's too small. Can we make that bigger? Is there a way to do that? Or it says download it. No. You can make it bigger. How? How can we stretch it, pull it? Oh, there you go. Can you all see it? Did I do that or you do that? Or you can all see it? Yeah, okay. Anyway, we can chant it together if you like. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Shantu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's do it again. Well, let's read the translation. Let all be happy. Let all be free from debilitation or disease. Let all seek goodness, auspiciousness. Let there be no victims of sorrow. Let no one suffer. This is a prayer for the well-being of the world. Actually, the first word Om is not in the mantra, and the last line is not in the mantra. It was added. Some of you may have heard this. So let's chant it again together. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Shantu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Hare Krishna. You can't see it. This mantra was our prayer in school. Wow. You can look it up online. It's there. You want to find it, Chaitanya Dasi online? I just clicked it, and when I clicked it, it came on my screen. I think I clicked that download button. No, I didn't click the download button. If you click on it, it should come up on your screen. At least it did on mine. So, did any of you try that? Just click right on it and see if it comes up. It works. Premanishta, it works. Yeah, okay. There's another mantra you probably chanted in school also. Sahana Vavatu, Sahanam Bhunaktu, that one. Ajinkya, you chant that one before class. I'm compiling some Vedic mantras that Prabhupada chanted, and I want to record them. This will be one of them. Prabhupada quoted this 51 times. And there's a few other really nice mantras. When they say Vedic, one of the 4 Vedas. Also that one before, yeah. So there's the Sadgama. There's another one, Tadmayo Sadgamaha. How does that go? Hold on. Asato ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso ma Jyotir Gamaya, Mrityo ma Amritam Gamaya, That's from the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. So asato ma, from the unreal, sad, the real, gamayo, let's go. Tamasama, no ignorance, jyotir gamaya, go to light. Mritorma, no death, amritam, gamaya, go to eternity. These are like blessing mantras, benediction mantras. Yeah. So, Sarvavantu, Sukhina. I looked it up this morning. 50, I don't know, there may be some repetitive citations, but Prabhupada quoted a lot in his lectures, and he said that this is the goal, the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement, Sarve Sukhina Bhavantu, that everyone will be happy. That's the goal. We want to make everyone happy. So we quote that verse as a Vedic mantra. Vedic mantra means it's coming from the original Vedas or Upanishads. Vedic mantra. So Prabhupada said, the Vedic mantra, this is the mission of the Hare Krishna movement. Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu. Everyone will be happy. Everyone will be free of misery. Everyone will see auspiciousness everywhere. Okay, so we're going to continue where we left off. Were there any questions from last Wednesday that we didn't answer? Do you know? You remember?
Hare Krishna. I don't think so. I think we...
I can't hear you, Chaitanya Das.
Just a second.
She's going to find out. So if you want to, I mean, our chanting, of course, our daily chanting is purifying the world, as we said in the last class. It may not seem like our chanting is doing much, but the world would be worse if we weren't chanting. And so this prayer, Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu, it's a prayer of blessing. And when we offer blessings, we ask Krishna if he can help us bless. So he can help us be a blessing to others. So if you want to bless the world, that's a verse you can chant. You can also pray for the welfare of the world. You can also pray that the leaders of the world will have intelligence to do the right thing. It seems like they're all been doing the wrong thing for the last few years, or maybe the last few hundred or a few thousand. And it seems like they're really doing the wrong thing now. And things are escalating in somewhat of a concerning way right now. If you're following the news, if you don't have to follow the news, you probably will live longer if you don't. But things are escalating. Countries are positioning themselves on their borders, ready to do whatever has to be done. And Israel is surrounded by countries that don't like them. And if some countries attack, it means the Americans will have to get involved. And when the Americans get involved, and the Russians are involved with the other side, and China with Russia, then you can see that's not a safe, it's not good. So we can pray for the welfare of the world. That is nice. And of course, when we do kirtan, we're purifying. Okay. I think we went through all the questions last time. Maybe. I thought there was like one or two we didn't, but it's too late now, right? You didn't save them. If you didn't save any, it means there weren't any to save, or you forgot to save them. So we'll give you the benefit of the doubt that we answered them all. Oh, you have the whole chat. Okay, so she's verifying. Okay, so if that's the case, that we answered all the questions, then we can begin continuing to read from the document. Okay. So I'm just going to read from the chat. You can read along if you like. This is Prabhupada speaking. Violence. Violence? Krishna does not sanction violence. But if there is absolute necessity, then violence is required. Yes, Krishna wanted to mitigate the misunderstanding of two groups of cousin brothers. So Krishna personally induced, all right, they are your brother. They are. Your brothers are Kshatriyas. In other words, Krishna induced Arjuna to fight because there was no way out of it. If somebody is aggressor, he must be killed immediately. Dharma Yudha. Yudhisthira Maharaj is thinking that although there was fight, the fight was between our own men, my brother, my nephews, my grandfather. So they are family members. I have killed them for my kingdom. He is thinking in that way. He is a pious man. Violence is required. We don't say nonviolence. So there's a lot being said here. So I want to go back to the first point, that Krishna, if you know the history, Duryodhana was set on war, and Krishna, and nobody really wanted war but him, and Krishna tried to litigate on behalf of the Pandavas and say, just give them each a little village and they'll be satisfied. Even though the world is their rightful claim, they're happy to take a little village. So it was a good deal for Duryodhana, and Duryodhana said no. He was so envious, he said, I won't even give them enough land to put a pin through. In other words, like one grain of dust I won't give them. So you just imagine the mentality of Duryodhana. So fighting as a last resort. Krishna already knew he couldn't convince Duryodhana, but he did it just to make it official. So Yudhisthira, as the humble Vaishnava, did not want to fight because, as I said last time, he thought, we're really fighting to make me the king, and I don't need to be the king. And Krishna is saying, no, that's not really, it's not a personal thing. We're not fighting to make you happy as a king. We're fighting because you as a king is the best thing for the world. So it's your dharma, it's your duty. And so that's what we're fighting for. We wouldn't fight for anything personal. Yet it was difficult. It was difficult for Yudhisthira to acknowledge that, and difficult, obviously, for the Pandavas because they're fighting their relatives, their teachers, and so forth. And so Arjuna shows compassion. And he tells Krishna, you know, these are our relatives. So even though they want to fight, even though they're aggressors, we should not give in to that. That's like giving into something lower. And so it's better we just, walk away from the battlefield. Better we renounce. It's like, say I'm sorry, even if you didn't do anything, just to pacify the situation. So that was Arjuna's mood, and it seems that was Yudhisthira's mood as well. It wasn't Bhima's mood at all. But, and then Krishna, he chastised Arjuna. Basically, not that it was bad that you were compassionate, but this compassion is misplaced. It's the wrong place for compassion. Now we have to fight. We have to defend. We're being attacked. Now, according to Kshatriya law, military law, attacking for no reason is against the codes of war. But if someone attacks you unjustly, or maybe even justly, I'm not sure the exact rule, but I'm assuming that you're attacked unjustly. Now you have a right to defend yourself, which means you have a right to attack back. And so the Kshatriyas had laws, and in the modern world, there are laws of war, although people don't follow them. So If you look at the world situation today, and you can see that even the people who are pro-Palestinian understand that Israel was attacked and they have a right to defend themselves. They just disagree on the way they're defending themselves. They don't necessarily disagree that they have a right to defend themselves. Hamas is sending bombs all the time. So naturally, they have to defend their people. That goes without saying. And that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have to defend your kingdom. Now, as we've talked about, civilians are never involved in the war. And so that this is the concern of the present war, that so many civilians are being killed. And it's probably going to go down in history as one of the great disasters of the world. Anyway, so that's point number one. Arjuna was compassionate, but Krishna didn't accept that compassion was applicable in this particular situation. And Arjuna wasn't really, it didn't seem to be upset about the situation, or he may have been upset, but when he saw that he had to fight his relatives, he was no longer upset. He wasn't inclined to fight. And Prabhupada said that Krishna had to speak to Arjuna to make him angry, get him angry enough to fight. So that's interesting. You can meditate on that. But we'll talk to the next point. Yeah, well, he was being a pacifist and he's a Kshatriya, and it was the wrong time to be a pacifist. So the next point Prabhupada is making is that we are supportive, or we stand for nonviolence, but we don't stand for nonviolence when innocent people are being abused. Then you have to use violence to stop other violence. Or if you have to use violence to stop other violence, there's no negative karmic consequence. There's actually a negative karmic consequence if you don't defend the innocent. So that's the sin of omission, the sin of not doing something. So that's the idea. Yeah. So Yudhishthira and Arjuna both were reluctant to be violent. And this is, of course, it puzzles many people that Bhagavad Gita is a book on peace, and Krishna is telling you have to fight. You know, how does that work? Well, Krishna is talking about in this scenario, he's talking about duty and how you have to do duty whether it's pleasant or not. And he's also setting the stage for teaching that you can't actually kill because nobody dies, only the body dies. So Krishna chose to use a battlefield to make these points, and there were he had come to relieve the world of the burden of demoniac military leaders and forces, and that's what he did. 640 million demoniac forces. Well, some maybe not demoniac, but the demoniac forces of the world were removed. That was Krishna's desire. That's interesting, isn't it? Yada yada hi dharma shaglanir bhavati bharata. He comes to establish religion and get rid of irreligious people. That's what he did. It's also, I think Krishna must have known that this was going to be difficult for a lot of us. You know, we're reading a book that says kill. I'm like, wait a minute, do I want to be part of this religion that's killing? And, you know, whenever Krishna does something or says something, we should understand he's all knowing. So he's got like every base covered when he knows exactly who he's talking to, who his audience is now and in the future. He knows exactly how we'll be thinking, and he knows exactly what we need. So I think for all of us, it has been an issue that Krishna's talking about killing. And that's like, oh, I feel uncomfortable. How could that be? And what is it? And so we're being asked to try to understand it. Why? What it's all about. And there is a level of detachment that if God asks you to do something, even you don't want to do it, you do it. It's not that Hare Krishnas are out in the street killing people saying, God asked me to kill. Well, he asked Arjuna to kill to establish Dharma, and there's so much adharma in the world today, so I'm going out in the street and shooting people. Obviously, we don't do that. That was never Krishna's intention and never anyone's intention. But at the same time, it does require an objective, detached view to be able to digest this reality that Krishna's asking his friend to kill. Of course, his friend's a Kshatriya, so it's understandable, but still, it can be difficult. Okay, so now Prabhupada goes on to make some interesting points. I'm going to continue reading. Well, I want to say one thing also. There's an interesting form of attachment, and this attachment comes in the form of detachment. Whereas we detach from doing something we have renounced. So we're not going to do it, but we're asked to do it. Our guru asks us, or Prabhupada asks us, do this. And we say, no, I don't do that. I renounced it. But when you're being asked to do something that you renounced, now your renunciation is to do the thing that you renounced doing. Does that make sense, or did I confuse you? I'm renouncing this because that's good for my spiritual life. Yeah, and your guru is saying, well, you're not going to renounce it any longer because we need you to do this. Like, really? So that, to me, that's like the highest form of renunciation, is to renounce your renunciation. You know, it's like your guru says, you know, like with Sarvabhauma, you know the story Sarvabhauma, he's this like really Paka Brahmin. And then Mahaprabhu convinces him to be a devotee. And then Mahaprabhu wakes him up in the morning and he gives him Mahaprasad. So like there's no Brahmin that's worth the name of Brahmin that's going to eat as soon as he gets up in his dirty clothes with dirty hands and dirty mouth, right? That's like, Brahmins are like the epitome of like, you can't take a step unless you drop some water and throw some rice and put some turmeric on the floor and then chant this mantra. Then you can take the next step. And then you wash your hand like 21 times before, just pre-wash. So then now you can actually wash your hands. It's like that, right? Isn't it? And you're doing puja, you know, you're throwing water on your dhoti. Why? Because water purifies your cloth. But your cloth's clean anyway. No, we have to keep it wet. Pour water on it, like that. And so Mahaprabhu comes over and he gives Sarvabhauma some prasadam, and Sarvabhauma immediately takes it. So what did he just do? He just renounced his renunciation. That's what he did. For bhakti, he renounced everything. So that's like the hardest, in my world, that's the highest kind of renunciation. And where, in other words, I may ask you to do something and it's quite easy to do, like take a little Mahaprasadam when you wake up, but you have all your rules and regulations that you have to renounce, that you're very attached to. You're attached to your renunciation. And then so I think sometimes it's like that. Yeah. Hold on a second. I just sometimes we have to renounce what we're renouncing, and that's difficult. And so, you know, we all have to deal with this reality of sometimes violence is necessary. That's a hard one for many of us who renounced violence. Of course, most of us never had an occasion to use violence anyway. But and we have very little occasion to use violence. But anyway, let's read more. Prabhupada will explain more. Just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave us the instruction, Trinadapi Sunichena Toror Api Sahishnuna. Adi Leela 1731. one who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, yet is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. One should be tolerant, forbearing, like the tree, like the grass. Amanina, manadena. One should give respect to others. In this way, one should chant Hare Krishna mantra. Because in chanting Hare Krishna mantra, there will be so many aggressors. The nature is so cruel, just like Prahlad Maharaj. A 5-year-old boy, his only fault was that he was chanting Hare Krishna. And the father was aggressor, giving him trouble so many ways. So we must be prepared. So the Prabhupada's taking this conversation in a little different direction, talking about tolerance. So I think we get a balanced. We're just angry and violent, but only when necessary to defend religious principles. And you remember what we said, that Prabhupada said there always will be war. That's another hard one to digest. Right? Let's read what little history. You're getting a history lesson in relation to this topic from Ajinkya and Mayuresh. I'm not sure which one is the history buff, but let's hear it. This is your Indian history lesson, political history for today. Gandhi was very fanatic about nonviolence. Subhash Chandra Bose said that the British rule is ruthless and inhuman in some things. So let's create an army of Indians and attack them. But Gandhi did not agree. Eventually, Subhash Bose had to leave India. He asked Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo for diplomatic help, created an army of Indians, and then the British fled India. Yeah, this is a tough one for non-Indians to understand why the Indians they liked Hitler, because they had the same enemy, the British, right? So when you hear, Indians are like, they have this positive view, Hitler wasn't so bad. And it's like, what are you talking about? Well, when you know the history, you understand, well, they worked together to get rid of the British. So that's a hard one for you guys in India, because the rest of the world doesn't really know the history, or many people don't know, and so they can't understand why you would be inclined towards Hitler. And all over the world, the wrong narrative is that the British were requested politely by Gandhi by nonviolent method, and they left the last 75 years. Apart from Srila Prabhupada, there have been very few people who would boldly speak the truth about Gandhi. Well, Prabhupada did say, Subhash Chandra Bose, and Prabhupada said that, Gandhi was nonviolent. He said, but you can't succeed in the world today unless you're violent. So it didn't work. And Subhash Chandra Bose understood that. And therefore he teamed up with these other countries, and he was able to drive the British out of India. Another history of exploitation. Of course, now that the government has changed, they passively accept the truth that actually violence by Subhash Chandra Bose's army was essential to stop British exploitation and drive them away. Yeah. If you want to understand why the violence was needed, you'll have to read the Indian history of how the British treated the Indians. It's what's going on in Gaza. That was probably worse than that in many ways. Yeah, it was bad. And this is, history is replete with exploitation of indigenous people. It's insane. Kamalochana says, since it's the nature of this world that wars are inevitable, this means the leaders are acting according to nature of this material world. How can they act in sanity if it's inevitable? Well, I think when Prabhupada said it's inevitable, my understanding was it's inevitable because there's always people who misuse the position of leadership. And because you have such people, there will be war because people will be exploited. Because that's the nature of this world. When someone gets power, they exploit. Not everybody, but enough that there's always a war because someone's always being exploited. You know, I mean, like, look what war is. The country, you just get invaded, and this foreign power just comes into your country, destroys you, takes over your government, and says, now you're part of our country. And we'll tell you what to do. And if it's a fascist government, they can do whatever they want. They can take away your property, your money, they can kill you. There's no trials legal. You can't say anything. So for that reason, Prabhupada's saying, how do you stop a Hitler or a Mussolini or this or that? You of course you try to use diplomacy, but in so many cases that doesn't work. Right? So how do you stop them? With violence. Another way you stop them, you stockpile atomic weapons and you point to them and say, you mess with me, you see that stockpile? That's yours. It's got your name on it. So that's what the whole world's doing. And the other countries saying, yeah, but we have more weapons than you. So that doesn't scare us. You should be scared of us. So that's what's going on. So, it's just historically a reality that you have to defend yourself from injustice. And oftentimes, or if not all the time, just talking doesn't do it. There have been peaceful takeovers that have happened, but it's taken decades before it actually happened and decades of people suffering. Like there was no war in South Africa, but there was decades and decades of mistreatment of the black people. So that's my understanding, Kamalochana, that because of the nature of the misleaders of the world, there will be exploitation, and therefore there will be the need for those being attacked to attack back. Or there will be aggression by various leaders who are trying to acquire more power and more wealth. And then so you'll have multiple leaders, and not so much today, but previously, multiple leaders roaming the world to stake their rights on property and put their flag on that land. Ali says, we're killing atheism with Sankirtan. Slowly, slowly, we're doing something. Yes. So we go to the next quote. Therefore, as there is danger, suppose Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us that be tolerant, but not that where violence is required, we should be tolerant. No, just like, Nityananda Prabhu was injured by Jagai and Madai, he wanted to immediately kill him. Mahaprabhu wanted. Similarly, nonviolence does not mean that in right causes also you will remain nonviolent. Yeah, nonviolent means you're nonviolent when there's no reason, you have no justifiable reason to be violent. But when you have justifiable reason, it's different. No, you do not attack anybody unnecessarily. You do not kill unnecessarily, animal even, not even an ant. You should be nonviolent by your nature. But when there is aggression, there are enemies. The Shastra says Dharma Yuddha. That is Dharma Yuddha. Yuddha means to fight. So you're fighting to protect religion. You're fighting to protect innocent people. And you're fighting according to some principles. So there is a code of ethics in which you fight. Okay. You want to post the next one? Keep going down? Or there is no more, or what? I don't have that document up. Okay. I'm going to continue reading. So, Praja Bartor Dharma Yudhe Vadho Dvisham. Dvisham envious. So they must be killed. But Yudhishthira Maharaj was thinking in terms of fight between the family, their friends, their nephews, their grandfather. So he was thinking himself as culprit. But in Dharma Yudha, the Pandavas, they tried to settle the issue. Actually, the kingdom belonged to Maharaj Yudhishthira. It was inheritance from his father, Pandu. But some way or other, they were cheated by the Kurus. They were sent to the forest. In the meantime, they grabbed everything. And when they came back, so they asked, give us some land, our ruling power. In other words, we're Kshatriyas, give us some land. So they would not give. No, without fight, we shall not give. So the Pandavas, even Krishna, tried their best to settle up the issue, but there was no settlement. So at that time, war was declared. That is Dharma Yuddha. They tried to settle up the fight, but it was not possible. When it is not possible, then the last resort is to take to fighting. That is Dharma Yuddha. So it's an important point Prabhupada makes. It's the last resort. And Krishna did not want Duryodhana to be ruling the world. That was not going to be good for the world. He wanted the Pandavas. And it was their rightful inheritance. And Duryodhana had stolen their rightful inheritance. So it was necessary for the Pandavas to reclaim their kingdom. Krishna wanted them to do that. And the only way, as Prabhupada says here, to do that was to fight. No diplomatic talks, negotiation worked. And so when everything else fails, then violence is necessary, but it's a last resort. You know, often what happens after a war is they negotiate. And that same negotiation they could have had before the war. But they didn't want to negotiate until their country was getting so damaged and they couldn't win the war. They just say, okay, let's negotiate. Isn't it crazy? Maybe we can kill all of you. Then we don't have to negotiate. So we fight, we lose. We lose our buildings, we lose our citizens, and at some point we realize we can't win the fight, and we say, okay, we'll negotiate. Now I have leverage over you because I beat you. You probably could have got a better deal if you didn't fight me. But now I have so much more leverage over you. Hare Krishna. Okay. This is the end of that big quote. We have no more. Were there some quotes before that we didn't finish? I believe. Have another history lesson from Ajinkya. Subhash Chandra Bose did not agree with Hitler's methods, even 1%. But for self-protection of India, he had to take help from Hitler. Yeah, diplomacy. And who was Tojo, the Japanese leader? And Mussolini, even Stalin, who himself wasn't less ruthless. I mean, that's politics. You have to make friends with your enemies because you all have the same enemy. So the only thing you agree with is that we have the same enemy, but you actually might be enemies as well. later on down the road, or your enemies become friends also, like with the US and Japan. You know, the US and Japan are friends, although we dropped an atom bomb on them. It's not what you do to your friends, but the Japanese were fighting against the United States. So, you know, now we're friends. Everything changes. Germany and America, you know. Hare Krishna. So, you know, one of the things that I often think of when we look at the way the world is, and in these discussions, these discussions are a little difficult because Prabhupada is saying, making it clear, being honest about the nature of this world, that there are people who exploit, and therefore the nonviolent people have to become violent to protect innocent people from this exploitation. That's the nature of the world. And it's always interesting to reflect on the reality that we live in this world, and we live in a place where horrible things can happen at any time. We don't know. Like you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. Is it World War III going to happen tomorrow? Is the economy going to crash? Is the price of petrol going to go up 10 times? Are the store shelves going to be empty? Like, we don't know. And even little things, you don't know. Is your husband or wife going to run off with the neighbor? You don't know. And so I think it's important for us to take everything not only on an emotional level, but a philosophical level, so we can just reflect on the nature of this world, and how being here, deciding to stay here, was the worst choice we have ever made, and deciding to get out of here will be the best choice you can make. And so these things, these kinds of discussions and what's going on in the world today can inspire that kind of thinking and help us become a little detached. And if ever if ever Maya tries to talk to you and say, everything's okay, you're going to be fine, it's not as bad as you think it is, just look out the window, or, you know, turn on the news and just, you know, get a reality check that, like, this is where you live. In case you forgot where you live, this is where you live, and this is the nature of this world. We don't wish suffering on anybody, but it's just, this is how it is, right? Sorry for the bad news, but, you know, outside of the spiritual world, it's kind of bad news, isn't it? Pretty much. Okay, so here's a quote from Prabhupada. Of course, in the material world, there are opposing elements, and therefore there must be war. It is not that war can be stopped. Rather, the party that has Krishna's support will emerge victorious. We don't say that you can stop war, but that if you fight, you should fight on behalf of Krishna. Wow, you know, that could be taken in the wrong way 500 years from now, you know, Hindu jihad, Vaishnav jihad, you know. So, yeah. Hare Krishna. What Prabhupada means is we should fight on dharmic principles, not over oil or over increasing our land, unless it's our land, of course. But okay, we have a question. Isn't reality how we perceive it? Well, there's two kinds of reality. That's one, your conception of reality, and the other reality is how it is. So just like in the Gita, Krishna says, birth, old age, disease, and death. Dukkha, doshan. Dukkha, doshana, darshanam. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, doshana, darshanam. So that means dukkha, the distress of birth, old age, disease, and death. Darshanam, you should notice it. That's pretty depressing, isn't it? I should notice birth, old age, disease, and death. How will I ever be happy if that's all I did was notice that? And Krishna is saying, because if you notice that, that will help you in your spiritual life. It will help you become detached so that you can actually become happy. So it will make you happy to notice that. So, Anna Maria, that is the reality. Now, you could have your own reality, and just not think about it. Well, just be happy, be positive. What does it matter? I'm not worried about dying. I'm only 25. I don't think about it. And so Krishna is saying, no, don't think that way. Don't think through your reality. Think of the reality as it is. So that's where Shastra comes in. So you can perceive your own reality, that's true. But Shastra says, but this is the reality. It's like this. So you should see it this way, right? More bad news. Bhagavad Gita is full of bad news, isn't it? Yes? I haven't read Bhagavad Gita in years. Oh, it's all bad news. My doctor said, you can't read bad news. It's bad for your health. So I don't read it. No. It's actually good news, but sometimes to be able to accept the good news, you have to be able to accept the bad news. Now, I want to talk about something we've talked about before. And I think it's important to talk about it again. If Krishna describes some bad news in the Gita, birth, old age, disease, and death, just like, hello, hey, in case you haven't noticed, this is what's going on here. And we're thinking, why are you bothering me? I was fine. Why have to remind me of this? Everything was great. And now you're bothering me, telling me birth, old age, disease, and death. That's how people feel, isn't it? Don't bother me with this stuff, right? What's wrong with you talking about death and old age? You're only 25, you should be thinking of positive things. This is part of the process that's necessary for our liberation. Now, let's think about this. Why is Krishna talking about this? Because he created it as a means for us to detach from this world and go back to him. So that's why he talks about it. Like, in case you didn't notice, I created this world, Dukkhalayama Shastratam. I made it miserable. It's much better on Brahmaloka. You don't suffer as much. I made this planet the way I made it because I want you to notice it. So I'm telling you right in the Gita, notice it. Because I made it for you to notice. And if you notice it enough, you'll think, that's a bad deal. I don't like it here. And you'll want to move on to bigger and better things like spiritual life. So if we look at the world and all its depression and depressing things, I think we should think, well, Krishna made it that way. So we could become Krishna conscious. That's why. And that's why he's pointing it out. It's not fun for him to point it out. It's not fun for him to make the world this way. But he's doing it for our benefit. So you all know this. I just am reminding you of this. Okay. There's not, Chaitanya Dasi says, or someone said to Chaitanya Dasi, is that you or is that somebody else? It's her. Okay. She's taking credit or she will take the blame. Let's read it. But there's not a lot of people who really understand how to use violence properly for stopping abusive behavior. Yeah. I've was told by martial artists that if you're a martial artist, there's all kinds of ways you defend without even taking a punch. you try to talk down, reason. You try to do everything without punching. That's part of defense. So yeah. But for us as devotees, specifically, any violence we use would be in self-defense, would be in defense of other devotees or in defense of our movement. But otherwise, we're never aggressive. Never would we commit any acts of violence. What's the word? I can't think of the word. I'm getting it mixed up with the word preeminent. It's not preeminent. It's when you, like, what you do in a wartime. When you attack and there's no aggression, you're the first one. There's a word for that. I can't think of it. Something. What's the word? Who can tell me? Preemptive. Yeah, that's it. Preemptive. Yeah. So for us, we're not preemptive, violent people. Okay. You want to hear something funny? I told this before, but you may have forgotten. So this story takes place at a playground, and the mothers are in the playground, the kids are playing, and one of the kids is beating up all the other kids. Like he's really aggressive, So what do you say when a kid's beating up all the other kids? You say, "Oh, he's a Kshatriya." So the mother's looking at the kid and says, "You see, my son's a Kshatriya." And a Brahminical devotee, learned devotee, he said, "No, he's not a Kshatriya. Kshatriyas protect people. They don't beat up people." So that statement is very deep in light of the world situation, isn't it? Kshatriyas protect people. They don't beat up people. They have principles. Okay. Anna Maria says, I understand it's like when we accept reality, we can live more quality life and focus on the essence. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else to read, or have we read out? Yes. Prabhupada. This is from a class in 1974. January 9th, 1974. Where were you? Nobody knows. Only Scarlett knows where she was. Rasa Stali, you should know where you were. Well, you were probably pretty young then, right? I was in San Diego distributing Prabhupada's books. Maybe I distributed one of his books to you, and now you're here. Who knows? Maybe I distributed a book to all of you, and that's why you're all here. Who knows? Prabhupada, energy crisis. So crisis must be there. Otherwise, if you live peacefully, even within so many crises, war and fighting, we are thinking this world is very nice in spite of all these difficulties, especially in the Western countries. Every 10 years, there is a war. First World War, Second World War. Before that, 100 Years' War, 7 Years' War, Trafalgar's War, Waterloo War, War. There cannot be any peaceful life because everyone is rogue and rascal. So there must be war. There must be punishment by nature. So that's your answer, Kamalochan. I didn't have the reference. There's your reference. I'll read that last two sentences. That answers your question. So there cannot be any peaceful life because everyone is rogue and rascal. So there must be war. So, if everyone was a Brahmin, everyone was a devotee, there wouldn't be war. So we can say there must be war because everyone is a rogue and a rascal. Well, the biggest rogues and rascals tend to rise the highest. In our workshop yesterday, they were asking about, someone said, do narcissists, are there narcissists who are leaders? And I said, yeah, that's quite common. Narcissistic people like to control things. So you get a narcissistic person as a dictator. Yeah, that's problematic, obviously. Okay, anything else? We have more. Don't go away. There's more on the way. There cannot be any defect in the creation of God. We have created these defects on account of our disobeying the orders of God. God never said that motor car ad bhavanti bhutani. He never says, instead of producing, the verse in Bhagavad Gita, Ananda, that rains, from rains you get grains. Anad bhavanti bhutani. So Prabhupada's saying, motor car bhavanti bhutani. Not, you're thinking you're going to succeed by creating nuts and bolts in factories and industry. And Prabhupada said, so when there's no food, what are you going to do? Eat your nuts and bolts? Yeah. That's kind of funny, right? Prabhupada could be sarcastic. God never says that motor car bhavanti bhutani. He never says, instead of producing food grains, we are producing so many unwanted things. People's energy engaged. Just like in America, in every country, so much energy and resources are engaged in preparing war materials. That means there must be war and you must be killed. I must be killed. You will kill me. I will kill you. Hare Krishna. That's all. So Prabhupada made a prediction, and it's a scary one, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This might ruin your day, but anyway. Just remember before I say this that you're eternal and you cannot be killed. Okay, so I'm going to tell you how you're going to be killed. Prabhupada said, maybe you've heard this. He said that this country is stockpiling weapons, that country is stockpiling weapons. This, we're talking nuclear now. This country, that country, there was, our friend in North Korea, he's got his missiles. They're all like set up to hit the US. It's not like, oh, it's just North Korea, South Korea. They have to worry about it. We're safe. No, these missiles are like, spot on for New York and Boston. And, I think that's the reason there's so many devotees in Alachua, because they're not sending missiles to Alachua. But Russia's got a huge stockpile. China's huge stockpile. Iran would like to have a huge stockpile. North Korea, they're always doing testing in the ocean just to scare everybody that they have missiles. The U.S. has so many, I think the world has enough missiles to destroy the world 50 times or 100 times, something like that. Hare Krishna, everyone. What do you think about that? We could destroy the planet 50 times over. Of course, if you destroy it once, there's nobody left to destroy it 49 more times. But we have enough, well, I guess, we have enough nuclear weapons that they could do that. So that was Prabhupada's analysis, that you're stockpiling weapons, they will be used. They're not just going to sit there. Now, just so you don't have too many nightmares tonight, Krishna consciousness could prevent this from happening. It could. But that requires a lot of Krishna consciousness from us and a lot of sharing Krishna consciousness with others. A lot of distribution of knowledge and so forth. So, anyway, that's what Prabhupada said. We will see what will happen. He said it many times. If there is a disaster in the world, all I could say is I hope it doesn't happen. I pray it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, Prabhupada did predict it. It should not come as a surprise. And you know what Prabhupada said? He said, after the war, the preaching will be very good. So this is just my personal opinion. You can take it to meditate on it. But if Krishna allows there to be a war, and if, like Prabhupada says, the preaching is very good after the war, I sense that we would see a mentality in the world that is so receptive to Krishna consciousness like never before, and that we would see that the war was necessary for that mentality to be there. That's the sense I get from what Prabhupada is saying. He's like saying, on one hand, you're going to blow yourself up because look what you're doing. You're stockpiling weapons. You're opposing one another. But, and Prabhupada said, it will happen. And after it happens, it's going to be, the world is going to be in a different state. So, whether it works out exactly that way, we can't say for sure, but Prabhupada did say these things. So if it does, it should not come as a surprise to us. So Matura's question, we can stop thinking about death right now for a while. Another question about renunciation, I think. From your initial point of class, how we may be asked to renounce a principle. Maharaj Yudhishthira had taken the vow to be truthful and had a great reputation because of it. And then Krishna asked him to lie in order to set up the killing of Dronacharya. He didn't lie as he was asked. Yeah. Well, he kind of lied, but not the way he was asked to lie. He was reluctant to lie because it was his principle. Yeah. And it doesn't the story go that Yudhishthira's chariot was above the ground, it never hit the ground, and when he refused that order, then it went down. Does anybody know? Is that the story? Yeah, so of course these are leelas, so Krishna is using his devotees to do these leelas, but thank you for that, Mathura. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about. He couldn't give up his moral principle to do what Krishna asked him to do. Yeah, so that's why some of the most difficult renunciation is to renounce the things you've already renounced. I've renounced telling lies. Now I have to renouncing telling lies. That's, yeah. Why did Krishna want him to lie? Because that would have been in the interest, the greatest interest of the world is right now you should lie. Because this is how we'll win the war. Because if you tell this lie I'm telling you to tell, our opponents will not be able to fight because their leader will be torn apart and he can't lead the battle and will win. So just tell this little lie. All's fair in love and war, right? So that was the scenario. So it was a higher purpose. Now, the problem, and Mathura, you know this problem well, the problem is that when with an immature brain, we realize we read these things and we think, oh, okay, so, Krishna said it's okay to lie. So I'm just going to be lying left and right because after all, it's all for Krishna. So I'm a devotee. Everything I do is for Krishna. So if I lie, it's all for Krishna, right? So that's obviously not what is meant. Thank you for that story. Very, very applicable to this discussion. Okay. What's next? Anything else? Or we have more? Siddhasarup says to Prabhupada, people in America are under the illusion that there will never be a war on the mainland of America because there never has been. Prabhupada. They are believing in so many things. Govindadasi, I heard that you have said there will be a war soon. Prabhupada. Now, how this atom bomb will be used unless there is war. Everyone has stock of atom bomb. So why these atom bombs are there? Siddhasarup. There's so many of them too. Prabhupada, it must be utilized for war. There must be war. There must be war. Hare Krishna. Okay. Now you know where that quote came from. I want to go back to what Prabhupada's saying. What Prabhupada is saying, they have the atom bomb, they want to use it, they need to have a war to be able to use it. So how are they going to use it unless there's a war and they want to use it and they're stockpiling it? Some power-hungry person who's not in a sane state of mind can trigger an atomic war. Hare Krishna. We're living in very interesting times. aren't we? Like, when was there a time in history where things were this tense and so many countries had weapons that could destroy one another 50 times over? Hare Krishna. Well, this is what's going to happen. I mean, I can see it all very clearly. There's going to be atomic war. Everything is going to be destroyed. And the only thing remaining in every city is the Hare Krishna temple, right? And a few people in the neighborhood who will all become devotees, and then the whole world will change. Yeah, that's how it's going to work, right? Anyone want to write the fiction story and make the movie? The world after atomic, yeah. That happened in Hawaii. You know, remember the big fire in Hawaii a couple of months ago? It was like right in the middle where the fire was. There was a church, didn't get a scratch. That's a statement, isn't it? Kamalochan says, Krishna lifted a chariot wheel against Bhishma Pitamaha to stop him in spite of his vow of not fighting in war. Yeah, Krishna broke his own vow for the protection of his devotee. Because the idea is you may make a vow, but there may be a higher principle. And so you go along with the higher principle, right? So, you know, it's like the principle is what is best for service to Krishna. So you may have to break a principle to serve Krishna in the best way possible. And so that's the principle, is service. So if you break a principle in the service of Krishna, that's okay. I wouldn't just take that as a general statement. And I would, if it ever comes to that point where you have to consider breaking a principle, you'd want to discuss that with senior devotees. Hare Krishna. Okay. Second part of the quote. Govinda Dasi. Won't this be an impediment to preaching work? Prabhupada, huh? Govinda Dasi. Won't this be an Prabhupada? The Russia and America is prepared to fight at any moment. Siddhasarup. This would destroy the cities. Prabhupada, huh? They would destroy cities. Prabhupada. And all rogues are ready. China, Russia, America, especially. Isn't it interesting? It's still China, Russia, America, more or less. Just like in every war, India has nothing to do with these Western countries and these rascal Britishers. They involved India also, British Empire. Unless they involve India, they cannot utilize Indian soldiers. And they won victory only for Indian soldiers, only because of Indian soldiers, the Sikh soldiers. Anyway, what Prabhupada's saying is, in politics, they'll do anything. They'll, drop any kind of integrity to win. That's what it's all about. And if you're a leader of the world, your reputation is lying on whether you win the war or not. Sometimes it's not even about what is best, but it's about your reputation. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Oh, Govinda. I think this can be our last class on war. I think we have pretty good understanding of what Prabhupada said, don't we? I mean, it's important. But most of what we're reading now is just reiterating, I think, what we've already discussed. So long the human history is there must be war. You cannot avoid it because it is material world. Disagreement, misunderstanding must be there. You cannot avoid it because everyone is not of the same standard. That is not possible. Somebody is in lower standard, somebody is in the middle standard, and somebody in the highest standard. That is division, goodness, passion, and ignorance. You cannot avoid it. So out of these three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the ignorance and passion are base quality, and goodness is first-class quality. So the human life means we are born either in the base qualities. Nobody is born in the first-class quality. Whoa. One who was born in this material world may be somebody who's taken his birth in the mode of goodness, but very rare. But maybe, but mostly they are born in base qualities, ignorance and passion. So Prabhupada's saying, if you don't have an educational system that's going to elevate people, then everyone's going to be in passion and ignorance, and those people in passion and ignorance will become the leaders. And so what can you expect? So that's why Prabhupada's saying there must be war, because there's no systematic way to purify society of the modes of passion and ignorance. And it is those modes that are responsible for these kinds of atrocities that are committed in the world. Hare Krishna. Here we have another one. Matura says, we're all in a war against Maya, our mind and uncontrolled senses. So we have transcendental weapons, so kindly given to us by Krishna. Yeah. Our minds are part. I was thinking yesterday, a little saying, our minds are partners in crime. Our minds are our partners in crime. Yeah. So you need the weapon of the Maha Mantra to, like, talk, and Bhagavad Gita, to talk sense into your mind so it doesn't commit crimes. So the more people will be materialistic, the world will be burdened. Therefore, there must be war, pestilence, famine to clear these rascals, clear out. Wow, that's a heavy statement. So that's Krishna's coming to remove the burden of the world. So the more the world becomes sinful, at some point the karmic reaction may be, okay, stop this sinning. You're destroying the world. You'll find these things in Europe every 10 years, 20 years, there's a fight, war. It is the history from the Greeks' history, Roman history. It's 7 years war, 100 years wars. There must be war because they are sinful. The same sinful killing animals continually. So there is war reaction. So what is that war? To lessen the burden, It becomes very heavy, unbearable by the earth. And to reduce the weight, there is natural. That is natural. And when there is still more power required, then Krishna comes. Arrange for a war in the battlefield of Kurukshetra and bring all the rascals and finish within 18 days. Within 18 days, 640 million men died. But why? It is Krishna's arrangement. Wow. When Arjuna wanted to become nonviolent, so Krishna gave him instruction that there's no question of nonviolence. You were talking like an anarya, uncivilized man. Kutash twa kashmalam idam vishame samupashtitam. In Warfield, and you were talking of nonviolence, rascal. You're in the middle of a battle and you're talking nonviolence, rascal. There is no question of nonviolence. You have to fight. So he was still arguing. Then he finally said, my dear Arjuna, you fight or you don't fight. It doesn't matter. They're not going to return. In other words, they'll be killed. They'll be finished here. That is my arrangement. He says, Nimitta matram bhavya savyasa chin. They're going to return. They're going to be killed. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanya bhavati bharata tadatmanam srijamyaham. Abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmajam srijamyaham. When people become too sinful, too much godless, the world becomes overburdened, and there must be some machine to kill. Prakriti kriyamanini gunai karmani sarvasha. Yeah. So Prabhupada is telling us the cause of what we're seeing going on in the world today. It's a karmic reaction of the sinful activities, the extensive sinful activities going on this planet. And this is the last one we have, and it's 11 o'clock, just in time. Prabhupada, competition, that is another thing. But if you say that war settles up morality, ethical law, then without any aim, we say, yes, war may be there or must be there, but the party who's got Krishna's support, they are victorious. They are right party. That is our philosophy. We don't say that war should be stopped. War must be there because this world is a material world. There must be war, opposite elements. Now, the party who's got Krishna's support, that party, that is the battlefield of Kurukshetra. We don't say stop war, but we say if you fight, fight on behalf of Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we will end. I think Chaitanya Dasi, I think Gauramani's trying to get in and the passwords that she has don't work. So I think you need to send her the password. Right? I didn't even sign in on my normal Zoom account because I lost the password. I had to sign in like all of you.
I will send to her,
Another
Gurudev.
account. I'm just one with you. I'm just a normal attendee with no rights. Can't share anything. Can't appoint anybody, anything. I'm being stripped of my power. Hare Krishna. Maybe it's a conspiracy against me, right? Some people think that way. Anything that goes wrong, they think, yeah, it's a conspiracy. Okay, if you have any, we're just waiting for Gauramani, or we could begin chanting as you like. Hare Krishna. And then please send me the password, and I'm going to see if I can change it back to the old password because that's the one everybody has. Usually they don't let you do that, right? So you already used that password. You can't use it again. Okay, so I got up very early this morning and I'm having an intuition that if I sit and chant with you, I will be chanting what is known as Swapna Japa, or Yoga Nidra. I will be doing Yoga Nidra. So Swapna means sleep, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to have to let you go. And yes. Okay. Hare Krishna, all of you. So you might as well just start chanting and then Gauramani will come if she comes. She's coming? Yeah, okay. Thank you. We'll see. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.